as much as solutions can be really revolutionary and they can be cutting edge and they can solve 1,001 problems. But if the technical people or, the people in charge of being proprietors of the business are not able to communicate to everyday users how this is marrying into their work and is solving their pain points and solving their problems, then you just have a good solution that never really sees the light of day. Is it really a solution if it's just sitting in-house? So when you get to the prospecting stage, you do not want to have talked to a client and then you're pitching to them something that's totally different. Globally, apart from now the wave of software developers making good money in the tech space, right now, if you look at the trends globally, I think the only other way of being able to make good money in the tech space is being in tech sales. My name is Joy Akinyi, and I am a business development manager for Penta-b. And basically, Penta-b is a geo enabler in the market with a lot of references in Egypt and Gulf region.
We are up. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Geo Habari podcast. I'm your host, Yariwo Kitio, and I'm pretty excited about this new episode. So this episode is quite interesting. We're going to talk about business development. I think this is the very first episode of its kind where we're talking about something that's very central within the tech development pipeline, business development, and why it's very important. And we're going to have a business development profession join this conversation. And why business development, I think one of the reasons why this conversation is very pivotal is being a very technical audience. I think one of the things we tend to not think about is the different roles that make the technical role thrive. And so for me, without business development, then there's no pipeline for tech and there's no connection with the client you're trying to create with or the scenario you're trying to build up for the market. I'll have our guest introduce herself and then we'll get into the world of business development. Hi Joy.
Hi Yari, how are you?
I'm so good. It's so good to have you here.
Same, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be providing a different perspective to the typical, very technical conversations. But yes, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Joy. And so for a start, maybe Joy, we can start by sort of giving us like a brief background about yourself, an intro of who you really are before we get into the business development conversation.
Okay, great. So my name is Joy Akinyi, and I am a business development manager for Penta-b. And basically, Penta-b is a geo enabler in the market with a lot of references in Egypt and Gulf region. So I've worked there since January of this year. And previously, I worked at Esri, Eastern Africa, in a position in the sales position. So as an industry lead, primarily for natural resources. So basically my background is in environmental planning and management. I went to Kenyatta University and graduated with a degree in environmental planning and management. And I'm currently pursuing my master's degree at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in GIS and remote sensing. Other than that, I am a yogi and, I'm somebody who enjoys, outdoor activities and just networking and interacting with people. So that's a basic snapshot of who I am.
Oh my God, that was so holistic. I love the different segments you've literally touched on. And I've noted like your experience has mainly been around business development, and you've mentioned Penta-b and Esri. I want us to go back a bit and talk about, do you remember how you got into business development? How did you settle for that with your background in environmental planning and now GIS and remote sensing? Maybe briefly about that journey. How?
A lot of my journey into business development. So business development comes really closely. It's tightly coupled with the sales roles in different industries. And for me, it was more of accidental. I would say, because it wasn't something that I intentionally was pursuing. As I mentioned, my background is in environmental planning and management. So a lot of natural resource work, environmental impact assessments, basically looking at the impacts of proposed developments on the environment. So that's primarily where my heart was, and climate change work and ESG. That's primarily where my interest was. And as a typical student in university, you usually think this course that I'm doing, unless it's a specialized course like medicine or being a lawyer or some other fields that are very specialized or a specific engineer. For this, it's a bit different because you're looking at no, it's not really different. When you do your course, a lot of us usually anticipate that you'll definitely be working in the field that you trained in, and that's the expectation. But I strongly believe in the notion that university gives you the lays the ground for basic things that you're supposed to learn, and also just how to navigate life so that you're able to go into the work space and be able to achieve what's supposed to be done, or at least undertake some of the tasks with a bit of on-job training and also being a determined person. So basically my journey was like that. I was that typical student who was very bent on, I did environmental planning, I'm a natural resource management expert, I want to be able to work in this field. So I came out to the job market with that mentality. And I did work in the environmental impact assessment field for a while. But then I realized that a lot of the proposed developments by the developers, it's businesses that people are doing. And a lot of it actually, even the environmental impact assessments, because I was working for a consultancy, it means that you have to go out there and look for work. You have to do a lot of prospecting. You have to talk to people. You have to look at what's available out here and be able to communicate what it is that you do. So basically in every aspect of a business, a consultancy or anything of that sort, or, a tech company or a pharmaceutical company, you have to find a way of generating leads and being able to find work. So a lot of the businesses, you want to make an impact and all that, but that's secondary to making money, because people start businesses to be able to make money, unless again you're an NGO where, primarily the goals are different. So it was accidental. It wasn't something that I was keen on or I was working hard towards. And at the intersection of trying to find work that's specifically natural resources, a good friend and mentor convinced me and said, you could try this role. It was a way of entering into a role that I thought would later turn into being an environmental management role. But then I got in, and what was available at the moment was, a sales role primarily. And I took it head first. And then I realized that I was actually good at this. And initially, I wouldn't have really thought about getting into this at all. So it's also an encouragement to just be able to look at different things. Don't just box yourself into one thing, because you might not have explored a particular skill or talent, and you might be really good at it. So yeah, that's a long winding road on how I got into it. But the short answer is that it was not intentional. I was not actively seeking business development roles, but I stumbled upon it because it was an intersection of what I wanted to do and what was available at the moment.
It feels like you guys are where the money trail is. It's literally like without business development, there's no business, there's nothing we're building for. And so I want us to talk about, like, when it comes to, and I know you mentioned you sort of decided to stay within that role and within that space because you realized you're really good at it. And I really like that you've mentioned that. And so I want us to get into, like, when talking about business development, and specifically in this conversation
Yeah.
where we're talking about geo and tech, and how would you look at that role when you sit within the business development pipeline? What does that look like for you?
Okay. So as I alluded to in the first previous section, is that basically any industry that the bottom line is making money, which is all businesses, you have to have some sort of business development aspect, whether it's explicitly named business development or not, or it comes to another name. Yeah, so any business has that role. So as far as I mentioned an example of different businesses, you can go pharmaceuticals, fast moving consumer goods, B2C and all that. But then as far as tech is involved, a lot of the tech companies I've interacted with are B2B, so business to business, where a business is available developing, tech, let's say software, because you're talking about the geospace, or tech, another aspect of tech or software as a service and all that. But then, yes, the solution might be really good and it might truly, be revolutionary. It might be solving a problem and all that. But then if the targeted end users are not aware of it, or they don't know how it impacts their business or how it's going to solve the problems that they have, then it's just a moot point, because you have a really good solution, but there's nobody to communicate or to be able to show, to marry the two. So again, I'll give an example of natural resources and the intersection of that and business development. It could be working in primarily natural resources. So let's say doing an environmental impact assessment or a forestry expert or any of those roles. But then if people are used to doing their work the same way, environmental experts are used to doing their work the same way, and they don't really see the need of, let's say, GIS software, because it's not a requirement to have a geographical output explicitly, but they use it all the time. You need location. Sometimes when you're going to remote areas of field work, you navigating using GPS points because you don't know the area. It's arbitrary. It's not like a place that has a landmark or anything of that sort. So with that, even though they use it on a day-to-day basis, somebody might have developed something and say, I'll develop this. It's a company that provides X solution for environmentalists. But then environmentalists don't know about it because either way, on a day-to-day, their job is proceeding. They're able to do their job and give an output, produce reports and submit them to NEMA. So there's really no point because they're still able to do their work really well and be effective. So that's why a business development person comes in tech, because as much as solutions can be really revolutionary and they can be cutting edge and they can solve problems X, Y, and Z, they can solve 1,001 problems. But if the technical people or, the people in charge of being proprietors of the business are not able to communicate to everyday users how this is marrying into their work and is solving their pain points and solving their problems, then you just have a good solution that never really sees the light of day. So again, is it really a solution if it's just sitting in-house and benefiting the people who really believe in it, but they can't really reach out to the end users that were intended in the first place? So this is how it comes in. Tech is just one of the industry verticals, but business development functions are actually supposed to be across all types of businesses that need to generate new business and be out there and have their solutions or their goods and services spoken out to in the world and to the targeted audience.
And you really dropped nuggets. I love what you've mentioned on it has to be out there. It does not make sense if you build it and it stays within your walls and no one knows about it. Very insightful. I want to go off script a bit now that we're talking about business development and what that means. Do you remember what your first lead was and how you closed it, out of curiosity?
Maybe in terms of, as I mentioned, my first entry into sales stroke business development was in a lead role, so what other industries would call an account executive role. And I think to me the most impactful one is usually the one I remember, the first one by merit being the first one. I think the one that impacted me the most was when I was able to negotiate a multi-year agreement, and after a while, months of negotiating and talking and streamlining budgets and all that, we were able to close on a multi-year agreement. So for me, that was the most impactful because it was with a government agency. It was significant amounts of money, and it was also
Yeah, I knew there was a money component. They like securing the bag. Okay, let's go. Go ahead.
Yeah, our metrics are primarily KPIs. I think we have other KPIs, but the most important one for business development is the money aspect of it. So it's hard not to concentrate on it. You might want to just focus on other aspects, but it's really hard to not focus on the size of the deals you're closing, or at least you're prospecting, the types of leads and the types of leads you're qualifying. So yeah, basically that was, I think the money aspect, the size of the deal was a big deal for me because it definitely was significant amount of money for me at that time. Not necessarily for the organization, but for me, and also just because of how fast that panned out after I got into the role, and also the multi-year aspect of it. You realize that a typical sales BD person will tell you that there are different cycles for the sales cycle and all that. So what happens is that sometimes when you just close deals for just 1 year, you'll have to do the same, start all over again the next year. So when you have a multi-year deal, it's an achievement because it means that you don't have to go over the same process, the next year and do the same thing. And in tech sales, the processes take a while. So you do not want to spend half of the year just, going through the sales process again. And then in another 6 months, you're starting the process again. So multi-year deals are very impactful and they're an achievement for most business development and sales people. So I'd say the aspect of the size of the deal, I think also the fact that it was a government agency and also the multi-year aspect of that was really, really a major boost for me and my confidence in the role.
I'm very curious. Again, off script. This is optional. You can actually not decide not to answer it. But are you able to put a rough figure to what that deal was, money wise, roughly?
Okay, so I am not in a position to say the exact amount because a lot of these conversations are, boardroom and confidential
Yeah.
and all that. But I'd like to say that it was definitely somewhere around the 100,000 US dollars mark.
Well, that's huge. Congratulations on that, Atakama. It's past tense.
Thank you.
And then so I had to go back a bit, and I really love that you've broken it down on for us on like it was multi-year, and then now the amount that comes with
Mm,
it. So if someone wants to get into business development, if I'm in business development and I'm a newbie, right? I'm just getting into it. Are there sort of structures or
mhm.
deals you'd encourage people to follow through or to look out for, and and decide, okay, this is where I want to invest majority of my time within this quarter or within this year? Like it feels like there's you're subconsciously strategizing in your head, like, okay, is it multi-year, is it a big bag that I actually want to put in my energy into? Like, is there a strategy to it?
Oh yeah, you definitely have to strategize because if you don't, it means that you'll be chasing your tail or spending so much energy on possible leads that are not really going to ever be fruitful. So a lot of the business development work is strategizing and being keen to follow the cues. So this is where you now do prospecting because when you do prospecting, you can if you tell somebody I have something that can really really sort out your problem and all that, almost most of the people will be interested in at least listen to you. So it's up to you now to move to the next step and be able to qualify. So what you call qualify the leads. There are fundamental metrics that you're supposed to look at in order to see whether this is a lead that's worth pursuing. Is this likely to turn into an opportunity or not? Or is this something that will take X amount of time? Is it worth pursuing now? Is it short term? Is it long term? Is it big? So basically, it's the qualification step depends from business to business. It's very unique. There are metrics that are similar across different industries, but it depends from business to business. So basically at lead qualification, after you've prospected and you have, this big of a pipeline and all that, as far as leads, you need to be able to tone it down and just be able to separate actual leads and that could turn into opportunities, and the ones that are probably just a nice conversation you had with someone. They probably do not really have a budget, they're not the target audience, they probably don't have the priority right now. Maybe they'll have it in the next 5 years, but you see business needs to have to make money within the year. So there are metrics that you need to look out for, and this is dependent on the type of business that you're doing. So I'll give an example. I've already dropped a few metrics that you can look at, but I think the most fundamental one is if your solution is actually addressing the problem that the potential client has or the lead has. So it's a very crucial metric to look at because um, you could be talking to someone and talking their ear off, but they really do not have the problem. You're probably just, in an echo chamber. So it's really important for you to be able to identify if the person you're talking to actually has the problem that you are looking to solve or your solution is looking to solve. Then I think the other important one is to be able to look at the availability of budget. Budgets are very important. You could be talking to someone, they're interested, they have a problem that can be sorted out. Yeah, so budgets. Now you could be talking to someone and they don't really have the budgets. They probably need the solution. They know your solution can solve a problem that they have, but they really do not have budgets for that. Like, constrained budget are always a thing when money is involved. So these are some of the across board aspects that you can look at in terms of qualifying the leads. There are others depending on business to business, depending on industries that you have to look at. But yes, so a lot of strategies involved. You can't just say, I'm going to talk to anyone and everyone who has a business. There has to be a method to the work, to who you are approaching. So again, as you mentioned, per quarter and all that, that's one of the other things that's very important in terms of the cycle. Depending on how the financial year looks like, if you're primarily working with government agencies, you have to know what the financial year is like. You also have to know the countries that you're working in and how their financial years look like. How do they, disperse the funds? Where is the requisitioning happening from? So these are some of the things you really have to be aware about. So yeah, the short answer is that it's very strategic. It can't just be ad hoc.
Still within this conversation of like strategizing and deciding what to pursue and how to pursue it, for you, do you have do's and don'ts when it comes to client interactions, and are there do's and don'ts for you within this game, within the strategy game of business development?
So that is also very different. As I mentioned, the business development role cuts across different verticals. And there's also a balance of, and also the entry point is not really restrictive because it's a matter of there are no very restrictive, skills or skills per se. Maybe soft skills, but hard skills, I don't think it's really restrictive because I personally believe that, and I've seen it with other people I've worked with, that you can really excel at business development and sales out of being somebody who can listen to people actively, be able to listen and just hear people, not really just listening, actually hear people and be able to derive some of the insights and not just come up with your own conclusions, actually hear what people are telling you. But as far as the entry point for that role is that I think anybody, honestly, I truly believe that anyone with whichever background is able to get into business development. The one that now qualifies who's good at this role or not is whether now your soft skills are able to take you through all this. So as far as that, I'd like to say that the do's and don'ts, personally, it could be person to person. It depends on what your morality code is. Maybe some people's religion prohibits them from, engaging in some other business. There are people who would never really maybe work with alcohol companies or, insurance and all that. And then because of maybe religion or personal reasons, like their own personal beliefs. Having said that, you also have to be cognizant of the industry and the company you're working for, because if the goals and values do not align with your personal goals and values, it's very hard to be successful at the role because you'll be in constant turmoil and conflict with your own moral compass and maybe your personal beliefs and religious beliefs. Most of the time, you have to also look at integrity. So if integrity is a big part of who you are, you have to know that that's something that you need to stick by and be able to say, these are the boundaries and this that shall not be crossed as long as I'm making money, whatever the size of the deal is involved. With saying integrity, I basically mean that because a lot of our work involves closing deals, things at high stake, prioritizing and all that, there are instances where there could be pressure to cut corners or to, be able to, meet targets really fast by doing things that might be, not reflective of a person with integrity. So a lot of the times you really have to be able to go back to the drawing board and look at what it is that you can do as a person and what it is that are your non-negotiables. So I'd say it's not really a tough balance, it needs balance. It's not really tough as long as you have your true north, you know what your do's and don'ts are, you know what your boundaries are, and then you also know what type of organization you're working for. So I'd say for somebody going in, you need to do research on the type of organization you're probably interviewing for or you want to work for, and be able to, and not just general research, because you won't find this information on the internet. You need to be able to maybe talk to somebody who is in a similar role, ask them how it goes, what is expected, what are the priorities and all that, and then decide, depending on who you are and what the values you live by, if that's an organization that you want to work for. Then once you're in the role, you also have to remember what it is that's important to you, but at the same time remember your moral code, your commitment to integrity, like that should not be your guide. So I'd say basically there's no cheat code, but I'd say that those are the things you need to look out for in the role.
And so when you're talking about these pipelines and opportunities. Again, for someone who's just getting in, or for you when you're just getting in, I'm wondering, are you able to speak to sort of the starting point? So I'm just curious on, like, you've just gotten a job and you've been told, okay, yeah, you're the business development manager or lead. I mean, for this region, the ball is in your court. Go ahead. What's that journey like?
So, as I mentioned, the business development role and sales roles are tightly coupled together. And then it depends. So, they're different names for different roles. But I'd say that if somebody is just getting in and they're inexperienced and that's their first point of contact, they're likely to start at either, I think, account executive. Depends, I think, but I've seen the entry point, maybe a sales rep, but I think I've seen account executive as, as an entry point for that. So you'd probably start as an account executive or sales rep because it's an entry point and you don't have experience and all that. You'd need to start at that point. So if the company you're working for is already established in the market, they already have clients, they have a pipeline, they do have, a database of clients, they have a CRM, customer relation management platform, then you find contacts there. You find already a built up database of clients, including relevant contacts. Now you need to be able to just upsell, cross sell, be able to reestablish contact according to the KPIs that you have. But I'd say that for other companies, it's unique. So there are companies who've already operated in the market for long, and they do have returning clients or at least a database of clients, even though maybe some of them are not active. Then there's another aspect of you will go into a role and the organization is new in the region, or they are very vibrant in another region, but they're trying to set up foots and expand market reach in a new region. So with that, you definitely need to start looking at bringing in a portfolio of clients. Now this is more advanced. At that level, you've probably been in the industry for a while. You do have contacts, you have connections, and in the case of geo, like we're talking about geospatial and GIS and all that, you'd obviously be looking at organizations that make use of spatial data. So the beauty of GIS is that location is inherent in any organization across. It's just that now you need to be able to marry what, like, let's say a census organization is going to do with your solution, or how you can communicate the relevance to them. So the beauty of being in this space, geotech, is that spatial data, as long as somebody is working with a location aspect, they're able to have a need for a geospatial solution. And then let's say you position yourself as a GIS vendor. Let's say the company you're looking to get into, or you've just gotten employed into, is a GIS company, primarily a vendor for software. That's still a bit limiting, but still can apply to many organizations. But then when you look at it as a geo enabler, now that's even wide, because you're looking at being able to enable business users who are in their billions to be able to, apply geospatial technology, whether it is inbuilt and it's not explicitly in maps and, maybe these other solutions across the board. It could be custom solutions for different industry and all that. You gauge in terms of the type of company that you're working for and also the maturity in the market. So maturity in the market determines whether you're going to be able to get new clients. There are companies that already have clients. They probably do not really need, any more clients. Of course, it's never really a bad idea, but most of the time will be spent on making sure that what's available in the database right now, the clients are, being talked to and being updated. You're trying to do all the work that involves making these businesses that are already in the database happy. Then on the other hand, if it's an organization that does not have a footprint in the market, then it's your job to be able to prospect according to, relevance and also what the target is for the organization. So it's dynamic. If it's a startup, then you definitely need to be able to, bring in clients and do the whole process. If it's an established company that's already been in the market, then you need to be able to work with what's in their database. Of course, you actually can bring in new clients and, have them in the CRM. So yeah, that's basically what I'd say. As it depends, it's dependent on the company, but those are the two major options that you have.
Now that you're talking about, like, the solutions and you taking the solutions to the masses and to clients, when it comes to the intersection of now the techies within the organization who are building for the market, so I'm trying to look at the interaction between the technical person and the business development department or a niche, right? So I don't know if you're able to talk about that relationship and how do you make it more impactful, in the sense that what you're churning out is actually what the client actually needs or what the market actually needs.
Okay. This is, I think, is a very important point. I'd say that you tech companies or geotech companies cannot really downplay the importance of the commercial or business development departments working closely with either product development or solution engineers, and yeah, all the tech aspect of that, because business development and solution engineers need to be able to understand well the client, and so that they can speak in one voice as far as delivering the proposed solution. So I'd say that it's a very crucial relationship that needs to be nurtured for any organization that's looking to have success and be able to speak to what the clients want. You cannot underscore the importance of that relationship between business development and the tech side, whether it's product development like I mentioned, or whether it's solution engineers, or platform configuration engineers, because you're basically looking at it in terms of, if the client is talking to you, or potential client, or a lead, or has talked to the business development person, and you've talked, you've had a rapport, you've after prospecting, you've qualified the lead and said, yeah, I feel like this client needs to be able to move to the next step so that we can pitch to them. Remember that we have limited time, limited resources. You can't pitch to everyone, you'll burn yourself out. So that's why also prospecting is important. So when you get to the prospecting stage, you do not want to have talked to a client and then you're pitching to them something that's totally different from what it is that they talked to you about. It looks like the fundamental qualities that are needed in like the team of listening carefully and hearing them were lacking during the meetings, and it's not just like a very good show of confidence in the company. I'd say that the two really need to be in synergy. Sometimes technical people have the skills, but a lot of the times, being in the market for this long, I've realized that tech people might not necessarily have the business development skill. They're really good at the product development or solution development, but they might not really be good at the skills needed for that the business development person has. So a lot of the times it could be two people in a meeting, three people in a meeting from your organization side, and it needs to really be a very synergetic team. I'd even go as far as recommending that meetings are not taken separately, so that if I talk to clients and we've had 5 meetings, then we are all able to be in those meetings, and somebody who is the vision bearer, who is championing for the client, you're able to hold the torch for that client, because that's what they need at the present moment. You might know that your solution can do A, B, C, and D, but the client is only asking for B. As much as you're trying to show them that this is this is something that you can do also, but you also have to note that the client probably at this point their focus is just on B, and that's all they need. So I'd say it's a very crucial relationship between those job functions that needs to be nurtured. It needs to be held in very high regard, as far as attending meetings and listening and hearing what it is that the client wants, and tailoring the pitch and also the solution offering to what it is that the client actually wants and solves the problem that the client has.
Within the pod, there's an episode we had on geospatial workflow X. So we had different techies give their
Mm-hmm.
perspective on X, or and so one of the things that was unanimously agreed on, business development leads have this thing of over promising from a very technical angle. How do we mend that relationship? Because you've now mentioned how it's a very
Mm-hmm.
synergistic relationship. Have you experienced that? In that episode, you'd fall under the overpromiser person. How do we navigate that segment of techies saying you guys overpromise?
Okay. I've had this conversation. It's definitely come up in any place where you probably have like solution engineers and the tech side, like product development and business development. It always comes up, even in the professional sites, like on LinkedIn, where people joke about sales and all that. It comes up. I'd say sales and business development people are just optimistic sometimes, very optimistic. And a lot of the times it's also because the nature of our deliverables are very different. I'll give an example. A product developer or, a solution engineer probably has metrics as far as, demos and, technical meetings and POCs and all that. And we probably are part of those. We have them. But at the end of the day, the most important KPI, like I mentioned at the beginning, is money. So a lot of the times it comes because of the disconnect of what the KPIs and expectations for business
Yeah.
development is and what tech is. So, because sometimes the pressure is very different. I'm not saying it's right or it's something that should be encouraged, but I'm just trying to give context to why sometimes that happens. So people who are not experienced or, are still new and, that's their response under pressure will probably see a potential lead, a potential client trying to pull out of the deal or of the conversation while this is the deal that, really is make or break for them, or it's their first deal or something of that sort. So instead of saying, truthfully, this solution cannot do A, B, C, and D, they'll probably, because they're looking at the potential of losing this client, and it's very, very heartbreaking for them because the consequences are great for them. So for the tech person, it might not really be, a big deal. Like it's just maybe another POC that was not done or anything like that. So it doesn't have real consequences as far as the money metrics. So I think giving context to why this probably happens to maybe a bit more inexperienced or newer people in the industry is that could be one of the reasons, because you're looking at it as this is the make or break. This is the last like $250,000 that I need to be able to meet my target, or to do this and all that. So there's that disconnect. Depending on what is expected of the two roles, it could be what adds to the pressure of over promising. But the more you're experienced in the market, you realize that a lot of the times, the upfront honesty is a lot more endearing, at least for clients who are serious and have these problems. It's much more, impactful. But you do know that because of the upfrontness and honesty and integrity, they're probably going to come back when the time is right, when, they feel like it's a solution fit and all that. And don't get pressured by, the pressure of, you need to close this and all that. You realize that this is a very repetitive cycle. And what I've seen work for me is that I'd rather be honest and upfront with a client and tell them, honestly, this cannot work or this will not work. And the other thing that I have also realized is important is to always refer back to the technical people. So there's no shame in saying mid-meeting that, I need to consult and be able to, like, I can say, you want A, B, C, and D, and F, but then you go step by step and say, A, we can do, B, we can do it. But C and D, maybe not. Let me just, confer with my team and give you a solid answer and all that. I feel like people sometimes have the pressure of, and I've also been victim of this, where you feel like you need to answer right away. You need to be able to give promises right away and all that. But sometimes when you're in a meeting, it's important to also just realize that it's okay to say, this particular point, because of the gravity of the matter and also just of the resources needed, I need to consult with the team who will be developing the solution, and then I shall get back to you on that. Yeah, I'd say that's the context, and also how to overcome it is practicing that muscle a lot more.
When you're talking about opportunities in business development as a role, and I think why this conversation is very important is again what you mentioned earlier on, where business development sits within the tech role and why it's very important. I think through this conversation we've seen how literally there would be no tech without business development. And so when it comes to possible career pipelines and opportunities, right, what does that look like? And basically the career pipeline when it comes to opportunities in business development and that growth curve over time, is this something that you would encourage guys to take up?
I'd say yes. I think it's very underrated because a lot of the times when people hear sales or business development, they think, and I have to admit, I thought this was the typical, role when I would think about sales and business development. I just think somebody is giving you products, and then you're probably going door to door and knocking and convincing people to buy it. And also, the challenge in our universities, Yari, it's that people do not really have information on the very numerous career paths out here. I know it's changing right now, but even when we're in school, a lot of the focus was still on the, key careers: doctors, lawyers, engineers, pilots. And those are very noble careers and they're quite stable, time tested and all that. I commend all the professionals in those roles. But because we all can't be in those roles, there are other very many roles that are barely known by people in the industry. So I would be really willing to bet that right now, if you probably talk about something along the lines of business development, I don't know because I wasn't really privy to that information in uni, is that I'm sure they're probably focusing it in people in business school, which I mean, it's practical. But then you see, when you come out here and it's practice, you realize that it's not really, you don't really have to have the foundational business course per se. I mean, it for sure probably will help, but the skills that you'll be using on a day-to-day basis are very different. Like, you see, like, are you good at doing presentations? Are you good at, being very audible and, confident and vocal and, during meetings, so that you can communicate the value? Are you able to understand how a geotech solution marries into a specific industry, or how it's effective in that industry? So these are some of the nuances that should be looked at. I'd say it's worth it, because we had a conversation with somebody in the industry, and globally, in terms of, let's say, money, because that's a really big deal to people. People need to make a living, be able to make a decent living, and yeah, as much as you're passionate about your job, money is a big factor in also working on a day to day. You need to earn a living. Globally, apart from now the wave of software developers making good money in the tech space, right now, if you look at the trends globally, I think the only other way of being able to make good money in the tech space is being in tech sales. So roles of business development, account executive and business development representative and all that. So I don't know if this is something that's very well known in the Kenyan market or Eastern African market, but yes, so people are looking for all this money and saying, okay, let me, learn coding and all that. And it's commendable, you should. But if you can't, there are other pathways to being able to make money and that people just don't know about. You can have like a no code experience or low code, or you're probably not a hardcore software developer or product developer and all that. But looking at it in terms of opportunities and being able to make money, it's one of the underrated fields here. Maybe because there isn't a lot of flagship, tech industries that are developing product like Microsoft and all that, developing here. We have offices now here and all that. So I'd say that it's worth it in terms of the money, because also the money aspect is dependent on somebody's how hard you work. A lot of the roles in business development and sales, you're not just earning your basic income. So you have basic income, but then you can also earn much more on top of that, depending on how hard you work in terms of commissions and on closed deals. So you can determine how much you earn, and if you're in that type of role, as opposed to the other traditional roles where basically what you're doing is you're working, yes, you're earning a good living, but your pay is usually the same every month. So if your pay is XZ amount, it's always going to be XZ, unless something happens like, taxes are increased or something of that sort. It's always going to be XZ. But then for sales, it can look widely different. One month it could just be your basic pay minus the deductions. Another month it could be you've closed a really big deal. It's like 10 times what it is that was in your pay slip last month. I think for that, I'd say yes, it's worth it if you're somebody who is patient, is good at communicating, is a good listener, and you can hone the other skills. You have some knowledge on the industry, or you can learn very fast, then you should definitely give it a shot. And as far as roles, I know you can start from like a sales rep and go to account executive, account manager and all that, business development rep, business development manager. So those are some of the roles to look out for, but they look different. Like I mentioned in my introduction, my role was at some point was industry lead, so it might not always be explicitly account manager or account executive. It could look a bit different. So just look at the job description and be able to do some research on what it is that different companies that you're interested in call their professionals in those roles.
Thanks, Joy. I feel like maybe I should change my career, honestly.
It's not for the faint-hearted though. When things are quiet and deals are not coming in, it's really frustrating. But that's why you need to be patient.
Okay. Okay, guys. So that's it on our conversation with Joy. Please do reach out to us if you need to talk directly to Joy. She's actually on LinkedIn. I'll actually plug all her pages within the episode description. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Joy, do you have any parting shots for the audience?
Yeah, just like to say, be open to possibilities, especially the young people who are coming from university. I know there's a lot of despair as far as, probably limited or lack of opportunities and all the layoffs in like the tech industry globally for people who are looking for remote roles. I just like to say that try and be open-minded. You might really, be dedicated to the career path that you chose or the course that you chose, and you're feeling like, yeah, I've spent 4, 5, 6 years on this. I do not really want to venture into anything else because then would have been an effort in futility, but it's not. Trust me, try and just be open-minded. Try and look at it as a way of gaining skills, because some way, somehow, all the jobs that you'll hold over time, the experiences, for some weird reason, they will all come together at some point. You'll probably be using a combination of two other job skills that you got in your first two jobs or something of that sort on your third job. So it's never in vain. Even if you started off as, the door-to-door sales role I was telling you about, some of those skills will carry you far into the next role. By your fourth role, you realize you're using skills that you probably had used were on your first trial job. So yeah, I think that's the parting shot I'd like to give. Be open to new experiences, to new roles, to non-traditional paths. And yeah, you might like it. If you don't, then you change the trajectory. That is life. Change is the only thing that's constant.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you. It was so good to have you. That's it on our conversation with Joy. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. For guys who are interested in getting into business development or you're interested in shifting your career, then I'm really grateful that Joy was here. She's literally given us an entire starter pack slash cheat code of what business development actually looks like. You now know where the money is, basically.
Thank you, Yari.
Okay, bye, guys. That's it on this particular episode. Bye.